We begin with a Fox News alert. President Trump arriving back in Washington, D.C. early this morning after signing off on the historic peace plan in the Middle East to put an end to the Israel-Hamas war.
All 20 living hostages have been released from Hamas captivity, and we are getting our first look at the emotional reunions with their family members that waited 2 years for them to come home.
But only 4 of the 28 deceased hostages have been handed over, which advocates say violates the term of the peace agreement. You're watching Fox & Friends First here on a Tuesday morning. I am Todd Pyro.
And I'm Carly Shipkiss. Let's get right to Trey Yingst, who is live in Tel Aviv after a truly historic day in Israel. Trey, those tears of joy say it all.
Yeah, Todd, Carly, good morning. Overnight, President Trump wrapped up his trip to the Middle East with a summit in Egypt where he actually signed the Gaza ceasefire deal. It was a day of celebration here in Tel Aviv as so many reunions took place. The hostages freed from Hamas captivity, meeting their families again after more than 2 years. We do expect to get more updates on their conditions today from local hospitals. With the 20 living hostages freed from Hamas captivity, negotiators are expected to immediately start working toward phase 2 of the agreement. President Trump told me he's confident it's going to work out fine.
I'd like to talk about phase 2 of the deal. Already Hamas has said they're not willing to disarm. What leverage do you have over Hamas at this point?
We have a lot of leverage over them, and the countries that would back them or had backed them in the past are not going to be doing it any further. And I think they want peace also. They've gone through hell. You know, there have been 70,000 killed of them, and they rebuild and they regrow, but it's not easy. And I think they probably say, we don't want this anymore. Look, they agreed to this. They agreed to the terms. So they'd be going against the terms of the agreement. So I think it's going to work out fine. Maybe you're going to have to be a little bit strong about it, or maybe not. But they've agreed to disarm, and they've agreed to other things also.
Inside Gaza, Palestinians continue to return to their homes in the north. A surge of aid and supplies is expected to reach Palestinian civilians as part of the ceasefire deal. The images you see there of Palestinian prisoners being released after they were exchanged for the hostages. The big question now is what comes next, but the ceasefire is holding, and for now the war is over. Todd? Carly?
Yeah, Trey, there's been a lot of focus on the hostage release for obvious reasons. But big picture, what do you think this moment means for the region overall moving forward?
Yeah, Carly, it's a turning point for the Middle East. And President Trump in our conversation wanted to be very clear that he sees this as laying the foundation for a broader peace plan for the region. And this could include more normalization deals for Israel. The president, in his remarks yesterday at the Israeli Knesset, alluded to this fact that there are other countries across the world that are interested in normalizing ties with Israel. And the president wants to use the momentum from this ceasefire to get those deals done. And so we'll see what the timeline is for that. But for now, you can see in those images, it is a day still of celebration here in Israel. And you hear in the voices of these hostages and their family members, they've been waiting for more than 2 years for this very moment, and it's finally here.
Trey,
Carly?
as for the 24 bodies of hostages that have not yet been returned, I understand that Israel says that is a violation. But in your heart of hearts, Trey, do you believe that Hamas actually knows where those 24 bodies truly are?
So here's what we know about the bodies of the hostages that are still in Hamas captivity. 4 of them were released yesterday, but there was an understanding with mediators that we talked to that some of the bodies simply couldn't be located. And this is a grim reality of the horrific October 7th massacre, that Hamas may not even know where some of the bodies are. And so we do understand, as part of this agreement that was signed overnight in Egypt, there is an international coalition of teams, not only from Qatar, from Israel, and from other regional countries like Egypt, but many others, to try and build together intelligence information and then possibly even send teams into Gaza to look for where these bodies are located. And so this could be a very long process. And of course, for the families here in Israel, this is not over until their loved ones come home. And even if it's the remains of their loved ones, they want to have a proper burial service in the Jewish tradition. And so this is a story that could drag on for quite a while.
Yeah, all those families who are still waiting deserve to be made whole, and we are awaiting that to happen as well. Trey Yingst live for us in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you.
Thanks, Trey.
Well, we are watching history unfold, which begs the question, how did we get here? One could argue it started in June during the 2-year war between Israel and Iran, when the United States launched Operation Midnight Hammer, striking 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities. It was a moment of deception, marking the largest B-2 operational strike in our country's history, severely damaging Iran's nuclear program.
Then on September 29th, President Trump unveiled his roadmap to end the 2-year-long war between Israel and Hamas, a 20-point Gaza peace plan, including an immediate ceasefire and the release of all remaining hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. By October 3rd, both sides agreed to come to the table for phase 1.
It was then Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner met with Hamas leaders last week to negotiate and seal the U.S. brokered deal. Approved and finalized by Israel, phase 1 of the peace deal is now underway, leading to the historic return of 20 living hostages yesterday. But more work needs to be done. Yesterday, only 4 of the 28 deceased hostages have been returned to Israel. Rotem Cooper was 84 years old when he was taken hostage. He was killed in captivity, and his loved ones are still waiting for his body to be returned. Imran's son, Rotem Cooper, joins me now. Rotem, we are so sorry for the loss of your father, who was one of the founders of Kibbutz Nir Oz. What was yesterday like for you and your family?
You know, yesterday was a huge roller coaster day. You know, it started with great anticipation. Myself and Dalia, my wife, we went actually to the Reim Junction. That's near the base where they first bring the hostages when they are coming out of Gaza. We were watching the the vans that were bringing them to the base. There were probably more than 1,000 people over there standing since the early hours of the morning. They're starting showing up around 10 a.m. It was very emotional, very, happy for a lot of people, including us. I'm from the New Orleans community. That's where I grew up. We had 4 that Ariel and David Conio, Matan Tsangauker, and Nathan Horn that, came out alive after 2 years. So there was a big uplifting. And then, of course, later in the day, we knew that we're going to go into a different mode, that we're going to start getting deceased hostages. But getting only 4, being notified only 4 was a shock. We met the families with Steve Witkoff on Saturday evening. We were getting briefs, intelligent briefs from various sources, and we thought that it's more like maybe there is a legitimate issue with maybe a single-digit number that maybe going to be harder to retrieve. Yeah. But 4 is obviously it's obviously Hamas is playing games and is not doing it in good faith. 4, it's a weird number, but it's bringing it exactly to half. 20 plus 4 is 24, which is half of the 48. And it's very clear that Hamas chose that number probably not by mistake, and that Hamas is playing games. And the big question from us, we're not going to stop fighting, but I'm saying Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Ivanka that talked to us are very clear that the U.S. is committed, and I think now it's putting to the test. Hamas is not negotiating in good faith. That's very clear. And now the next few days are crucial to send a very clear message to Hamas that this is not going to be tolerated.
Yeah. Well, there are still a lot of questions leading into phase 2. What do you think the future of Gaza will be like?
Well, I can tell you thing. Trump, has big plans for the region, and it's great. But I can tell you that it's not going to move forward without solving the hostage situation. And getting out all the 20 alive is great, more than we could expect a week ago. But Israel is not going to move forward without getting all the remaining 24. So the first thing to even think about, normalization, next phase, peace, it's all great. But nothing going to happen without these 24 hostages being returned, and it's very clear that Hamas can return almost all of them yesterday.
Yeah. You know, these hostages who were released yesterday, they could have a long road ahead of them. Your mother was also taken hostage with your father and released in 2023. How is she doing now?
You know, not too good. You know, she lost her husband of 60 years. She's not living in the community that is, you know, still for the most part, nobody lives in Kibbutz Nir-Oz. You know, I would say she has what I think the syndrome of a Holocaust survivor. She doesn't want to talk about what's happening over there too much anymore. Yeah. So, you know, getting back my father for proper burial is probably the minimum we as a society should do and owe her, you know, to kind of get somewhat of a closure. There's never going to be a full closure on what's happened that day and the following 2 years.
Well, there is no moving on from this, but we are praying that your father comes home to receive that proper burial that he and all of you deserve. Rotem Cooper, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.